Next, Multicultural Producers Roundtable. Please welcome to the stage Dami Akinmeji from Google's Multicultural Content Partnerships team.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Dami Akinmeji. First, I want to thank you all for braving the weather, although it's not a lot of snow today. But thank you for coming here today. I think we're really excited about the discussion that we are getting ready to have. First, I would like to thank our host, the Sunrise Collective. So, Gold House, DDK, TAF, thank you for having us. So this is our second year here. I didn't screw it up too bad last year, so they let me come back. So I'd also like to give a shout out to the Google team sitting right here in the front. This is really important work for us to not only support the multicultural houses, but also the filmmakers and the storytellers. What we really focus on is kind of the downstream part of media entertainment. You know, we focus on helping users discover and consume content across our platforms, whether that be your web browser, your phone, but where this team really focuses on your TV in the living room. And for the past few years, I have spent my time working with our product team, our content partners, on helping elevate culturally relevant and inclusive content across our platforms. But the truth is, we rely on what comes through the pipes. You know, we can't do it alone. And we rely heavily on a lot of the people who you're about to hear from today. The people who make this content, the people who advocate for stories, the people who fight for the filmmakers. So I'm an engineer by training. That's like the core of who I am. And engineers really try and simplify things. So I was really thinking about what's one word that I can use to simplify what a producer does. And one thing that just came to mind is like fighting. They fight. Right? How's that? It was okay? Okay. They fight for budget. They fight to preserve the director's vision. They fight for casting. They fight for locations, you know. So we're gonna test that. And we're gonna see if that really works. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, and let's start introducing the panelists. Okay. You can clap if you want. All right. So we're going to start with Nina Yang Bongiovi. Oh, yeah. Y'all didn't even let me tell you the good part. So Nina is a BAFTA-nominated, award-winning film producer who, alongside Forrest Whitaker, founded Significant Productions, focusing on multicultural narratives with an eye on authenticity, diversity, and inclusion. And she is a producer with a stellar reputation for having in-depth knowledge of film financing, creative producing, and a knack for discovering talent. So one more time for Nina. Second panelist is Amy Aniobi. Woo! So Amy's my Nigerian sister, so give her another round of applause for that. So Amy is an award-winning writer, director, producer, currently on an overall deal with HBO and HBO Max. She's a founder of her production company, Super Special, an industry talent incubator. And most recently, Amy was most recently executive producer on Insecure and a showrunner and head writer on Two Dope Queens for HBO. One more time for Amy. And Khaula Malik is our next panelist. So Khaula is a filmmaker and a programmer based in New York City. She most recently co-produced Apple TV's Girl State, a sequel to the Sundance and Emmy Award-winning Boy State. And Pete, don't take it personally. Ladies first, so you're left. It's all good. We're just gonna leave him standing there in the corner. No, Pete Corona. Pete, thank you. Pete most recently was a senior director of drama series at Netflix. Pete was responsible for launching over 23 seasons of streaming hours, including feature script consultations of some of the most biggest and inquisitive shows as a title lead. Pete most recently exited Netflix and is launching his producing venture. So one more time for the panelists, everyone. So let's dive right into it. That word fighting, how accurate is that? Or how would you, in your words, describe what a producer does? So we can start with you, Nina.
Ooh, okay, fighting. I feel like that's my whole life, is fighting for stories. But it's such a blessing I get to do what I do, because I get to create art with artists. And so fighting for the right reasons is what motivates me. And so many of our stories are left untold, or they're told by people outside of our communities, and that's really a hard pill to swallow. So since the business have shifted, my fight is still consistently tough, but there are those in front of me, and what I would like to do for those behind me to come into this business is to pave that path. And that fight is real. And when you build enough leverage, you're able to really speak out, and where you hopefully the doors open up a little bit more.
Amy?
Yeah, I really do agree with the word fighting, but I will say that as a Black woman, all my life I had to fight, and it's exhausting to fight all the time. So sometimes I try and switch my mindset to negotiating or persuading, so that I can be like, what's the game? Like, what's the way that I can get them to see what I want? What's the way that I can get them to believe in this writer that I love? And sometimes when I try and think of it as like I'm not fighting with them, but they don't see what I see, how do I make them see what I see and turn it into a bit of a negotiation? It helps me feel less tense about all the no's, because there are a lot of no's.
So influencing, we'll add another word to fighting.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So we're gonna pick up words as we go along, okay?
I love it.
No, I love that, exactly what you said. I feel like, at least for me, on the specific project I'm here at Sundance with, it wasn't necessarily fighting, it was getting the team to see kind of the other side of the perspective, which, like you were saying, Nina, it's so hard for us to be seen in the way that we want to be seen, and for us to, I guess, fight for that to be within the film too, that like both the conversations and kind of picking your battles, because not every battle will be won. So like kind of thinking about like how am I weighing this for me, my integrity, how I want to see this project come out or anything I do, and then picking the right path.
Let's stay on that for a second. How do you pick your battles?
I think about what battle do I think is winnable, right? Or like, if I can move the needle in this way here, then maybe this other battle I can win later on down the line.
Pete?
It's an interesting perspective, because I was on the other side of it than the person probably saying no, right? But
No, hey, get Pete out of here. We're last try. Get him out of
so
here.
I'm just throwing that out there, okay? Just like level setting. But it was also a fight for me as well, because I had bosses, right, that I had to go to, and as someone coming from a marginalized and underrepresented community, it was so important for me to make sure that on all of my shows there were 50% females directing on the show, and within the casting process, which like working with showrunners, sometimes they have a very specific idea of who they want for that particular role, because they've lived with this character for so long, right? But you have to remind them that all of these services, every movie, everything is global. So like everyone just wants to see themselves reflected on screen. So that was really my sort of default answer for a lot of these pushbacks and a lot of these no's was, well, you want your whatever that widget, whatever that X project is to succeed. So in order for that to succeed, you need to have people that look like you and look like me in this room and on that screen. So that was really and it was a fight. It was always a fight for everything.
You've all picked one of the hardest career fields to do. Like, why? You could have done any. you could have done
Are you
something.
my mom?
She might have hit me up before this panel to to talk about this. There's still time, Amy. You can be a doctor if you want.
I mean, I always joke that I don't have other skills except storytelling. Like not only it's ingrained in our culture, but also like it's what I love the most to do. And I find as a writer, I came into this career primarily as a writer first, and because as a young child I was used to assimilation and trying to blend in, I can almost match anyone's voice, and so I can always see the story that other people want to tell, and sometimes other people can't see it. And I realized I had this skill just from having to blend in so much as a kid that I'm like, I see what you're saying, and I see where you want to go, and I want to help you get there. And it's even though it's so hard, I don't know another thing to do except support other storytellers because I just need more of us telling stories. That's what it's about. Yeah.
Amazing. Anyone else want to jump on that?
I chose producing is the most unglamorous job in the ecosystem of a film or television, because when a film is launched, you're at the red carpet and you stand there and they're like, "Can you move to the side? Can you just?" We just want the writer, director, actor, not you, right? So you got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with that. But the reason why I do it is because there's so many of us that are, creators of color, narrators, directors, writers of color, talent of color. Nobody really wants to be the producer, so someone's got to do it. Because I know
Facts.
so many of you want to be writer directors or actors. Nobody wants to produce.
How many writer directors do we have in the room? Raise your hands.
See,
You're
see,
right.
see? Yeah, no, so we need more producers, and
Yes,
this
we
is
do.
why I do it. I also teach part-time at USC for the Peter Stark producing program, and it's to evolve the producing program to have more producers of color, because until we're in these seats to make a difference, we can move the needle in storytelling by championing filmmakers and writers and actors and all the creatives, heads of departments, to put them in these positions where they can also lift others up, in their community. So that's why I choose it. But it's hard. It sucks, right? So.
Get in there, Pete.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of that. One of my first jobs was as a writer's assistant on Annie's first scripted series. And so I love writers and I love working with directors because I was in that room and saw the battles that they had to fight. But real change comes from people like us who are in those decision-making abilities that can say, yes, we can hire that writer, yes, we can hire that director, and are also saying no to the people above, right? And then greenlighting those series and the people who are producing, because the royal we, the people who are on the other side, are looking for hyper strong producers that can realize these projects and can deliver on them. And we need more. We just need a bigger pool of those.
Go ahead, you can clap. On that same note, and you can start. What makes a good producer? Are there certain traits, certain skill sets?
I think it's going back to a few of what the panelists have said, is choosing your battles and knowing that it's a game, right? And it's also a game of statistics. Like, you're not going to get everything you want, but it's about getting as much as you can. And so it's recognizing trying to preserve the vision of whoever the creator is as much as possible, and then working outwards to make that realization happen. And then just really protecting them and making sure that idea stays as long as it can throughout, from upstream ideation to whenever that movie premieres or that show launches, and making sure that it has marketing. And so it's kind of a 24-hour, 7 days a week job, right? Until that thing is out of it grows up. But even then, you're still taking care of it, and it's still staying with you at home.
Khaula?
Yeah, I would say I think one of the most important things, at least for me as a producer, is communication, and having high EQ, because so many times in projects, of course we would love to work with our friends all the time, but that's not always the case. So you're always going to be in a situation where there is a different kind of personality that you haven't encountered. And so I think also being able to match people's vibe, right? And being able to read sort of how they need to be communicated to versus how you usually communicate. So I feel like communication, just building that toolkit for yourself, and I admit is can be hard for me at times, but I feel like I've learned a lot in the last couple of years of influencing and thinking about things as a negotiation and kind of dropping your ego.
You're here with Girl State.
Yes.
You want to share what you shared in the back about how like it's less stressful coming here with me that you don't have to sell?
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't work on Boy State, so I was brought on to work on Girl State, and it was nice that there was already a distributor on board. I also think they brought me and the other co-producer who is here. I want to shout her out, Aurora Brockman. It, as both of us are women of color, we're filming young women in high school, and our ask is like, we got to find diversity, we got to find these things. And so trusting that like we are the right people to find that, and like sitting in that, I guess, power. So I think the release of the film is less stressful because like there is no worry about selling it, but the making of the film was high stakes, and like you want to hit, the jackpot on the people that you find, but it's not that easy when you're trying to prioritize all these different elements and filming in Missouri, which is very white.
Amy, what makes a good producer in your eyes?
I couldn't agree more than to also say EQ, like being able to, because everybody's different. You come to a set or you come to a production meeting and every single person has a different energy, and being able to read like, oh, I can't talk to them about this right now, but it's not a no. They're saying no, but it's not a no. And like literally being able to speak the language of humanity, I think is so important, sometimes almost more important than completely understanding like the finances of a project or things like that. It's like being able to find the people who do understand that and match their energy and read them well. That's what I have found, but I really want to hear what Nina has to say because
Nina, I'll let you go last for a reason on this because I do want to hear what you have to say.
What makes a good producer is identifying talent. Okay, first and foremost, identifying talent, identifying a project that has potential. Because maybe a project isn't written well, but you see there's a gem in it. And how do you develop it to be something that is valuable to the marketplace? Leading to marketplace, understanding marketplace. The marketplace is constantly shifting in feature films and as well as television. You have to understand that. And then you have to understand art. So you have to meet art and commerce, because if you're like, I have the greatest art piece, and you're telling your financiers, like, this is the greatest art, it's philanthropy. They're not gonna invest in it, right? So it's a combination of everything that makes a great producer, and but so many producers I'm meeting, emerging producers saying, I have this great project, I need $5 million, and if I ask them a question, how are you gonna make that money back? They don't have the answer. Okay, so you can't go into that process and say, this is great, I need $5 million, I don't know how to make your money back. That's not good business. For us to build a sustainable business, you want your investors to make their money back and more so they could keep coming back and allowing you to tell our stories. So it's a combination of everything. And so does that make sense?
it definitely does. Yes, thank you so much.
And so you hit on something, how we are in a business, depending on what stream of video you're on, where it's rapidly changing. The business model is evolving. What do you see as some of the challenges that come with this evolution in this business, whether it be streaming, whether it be disintermediation? There are a lot of apps. We know there are a lot of apps. Is there any particular thing that you see that is a challenge, or something that presents opportunity specifically as it relates to diverse and inclusive content?
Okay, it's a loaded question. Okay.
Take it by pieces. Anyone wants to start
All right,
with
all right,
that?
I'll start.
Okay.
So 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, we came here with Fruitvale Station, okay? And we were like, that was the beginning of the rise of independent film. Really, I always call it the Kugler effect, right? He opened up the path for independent filmmakers. And then he was the first one where a first-time feature filmmaker where studios went crazy, right? Because traditionally, we're told first-time feature filmmakers can't do it. Until it happened with him, then every agent in town was signing up first-time features thereafter because of the Kugler effect. And then for about a good 8 years, the business was so good in independent film. And then in 2015, Dope came along, the bidding war. And then, this comes along, bidding war. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. This is totally sustainable. But in the last 2 years, the film business has shifted. It's shifted where indie films are not getting sold because the streamers pulled back. They don't want to overpay for films. They want to develop in-house, right? So that business shifted, and I'm really nervous about the sustainability of independent film because this is where we get the best artists breaking out, and we have to figure out how to make it sustainable. So that's where we are right now. Is I'm constantly looking at the marketplace. I'm closely working with agents and my sales agents saying, what's the market like? What's the market last year? What's the year before? How is it this year? So I'm constantly in tune with them and tracking every independent film and why are they selling or why are they not selling. So that's what's going on with the film market, and the challenges are that people, the ebb and flow of the marketplace. Right. So,
What do you think? I think specifically, is it on the buyer side or is it on the writer side? What do you think specifically can be done to help balance that out a little bit?
I think that to have the gatekeepers understand that there is talent and to be willing to take some risks on talent, I feel like we've proved it just from my end and a lot of my peers. We've proved it over and over again that it could be successful, profitable, and also move the needle in storytelling. So I think more producers that's willing to take the risk, also create great like allyship with executives at the studios, like all the different studios. I have an ally at every studio. And then they go, oh, you're gonna sign on to something? All right, we'll bet on you, but you can bring in some talent because we trust your gut because you have proven track record. And that's why I'm always proponing for more incredible producers to be able to be that person, and you're willing to bet on your reputation, your track record to do this. And then you deliver, over-deliver, and then that opens up the marketplace more and more.
We are very thankful for you. Pete, you want to take this, and specifically, can you take it from the perspective of Latinx stories specifically? What are some of the opportunities, challenges that you see?
Yeah, I think part of the big bang of content that happened 5 years ago and the demand for content very quickly, I think a lot of writers and directors were thrown into situations that they weren't necessarily set up to succeed. And because there's typically like levels that you move up to in a room, right? So you learn at every level how it works. So once you get to the showrunner level, you know how to run that room, and then you can truly mentor people and bring in and widen that gap. What the opportunity that I see for us is that we haven't been able to tell the 2.0 of our story because the buyers haven't reflected us. So they keep buying the same thing, hoping for a different result. And so the audience isn't even going to the shows that they hope they're super serving. And so then it tends to prove out their point that our audiences don't come to it, right? But we know that they over-index in film and TV already, so it's easy for people to say, well, we're already satisfying this audience, and so we don't have to do something that's hyper-specific or even trying to serve this audience, which is challenging, right? So that comes back to like fighting for content. But I think at the end of the day, and I think a lot of different communities are having to face this, it's if you strip color from all of the scripts and just have them side by side, it still has to like rise to like this sort of like creative excellence and a bar that everyone is looking for, right? And that's not to say that nobody can do it, but it's just it's more working with the writers on the producing side. It's pairing younger writers with upper level writers and people that can actually help them achieve their idea, right? Because the worst thing is to have just throw them on a bike and then have them fall and break a leg. It's like you want to put training wheels on them and then make sure that they really are succeeding, can go the distance. So it's really making sure that they have enough support in all ways, mentorship from writing, from funds, access just to other writers from who are like super successful, So that's how I think we're gonna win, is to make sure that like we're sharpening ourselves so much so that it's so undeniable, and then making sure that we have new voices, and I think you're able to bring new voices when you have someone else like the amazing ladies that are on this panel and being like, I can help this person bring this to life.
I'd like to interject something. I just want the audience to understand there's a distinct difference between television and feature films, because you're talking about television specifically.
Right, and writers are like
So-
one-off,
so,
and yeah.
So know that. Yeah.
Yes, very, very different in the challenges with the theatrical business and the challenges in the TV business. But and I think that's why I'm really excited about this panel, because you guys represent both. You know, you guys
And
made
documentary.
yes.
Yeah, because Amy, for television, it's completely showrunner driven.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think sometimes the way we use language has to shift when we talk about supporting newer storytellers, because you use the term, and I understand it, the term training wheels. And I think it's a little triggering to assume that people of color need help making their art. I think the training wheels are for all the other shit. It's for all of the people shit. It's for the how to talk to an executive. It's for forging those relationships at different studios. And I wonder if we can get in the habit of, when we talk about especially newer creators of color, to not discuss them as if they are less than and they don't know things. There are things we don't know, and yet I guess just the language around saying training wheels, I got a little triggered because I hear that a lot. I hear it a lot.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's
Hey,
from the
Pete,
other
that's strike
side.
3, man. You have to go.
I didn't work green, and I see
All
training.
respect, it's from the other side. All respect, but I do think like language is so important. And I got into a conversation yesterday with an executive who was saying like, we need to get creators of color to make more stories that are not just about identity. And I was like, we do make those stories. You don't greenlight them. And I'm like, there's an issue there where it's like, we keep on making it the person of color's fault that they're not being accepted into the pathways of success. But in fact, the system is not actually set up to support them. So
There's
yeah.
a disconnect, right? So
Yeah.
like there's still something, there's an archstone that we're missing between the two, because both can actually exist and help each other. So it is still that piece that we need to
Right.
forge in the middle.
I feel like there's like a level of grace that we're not given, that I feel like is given to other people to like make a mistake. It's almost
That
like
part.
putting us on a pipeline towards failure, that where we don't get any support, and then if something goes wrong, it's our fault. But there was no foundation created for us to even succeed. And like, of course, we'll bust our asses and like do the best we can. But like, again, just we're not resourced in the same way, I think.
I think some of what I'm hearing is there's this distinction between supporting a producer to tell certain stories and making tell their stories, or supporting them to kind of get out of their way, clear all the BS, and just let them do what they do best. So if we kind of follow that train of thought, if you have someone in the audience says, I want to be a producer, and if you could script what they should be doing in the next, I don't know, 6 months to 2 years, like what would that look like? Are there programs, or is it, to your point, identifying talent? What should that person do who's starting out today? Ooh,
TV or film.
that's a great. Okay, so let's take 2. So let's start, and documentaries. I won't forget.
And documentaries.
Have a trust
They're
fund.
very specific
so-
lanes.
Yeah,
And
so
you have
let's
to identify that.
So let's talk very specific. So let's start with documentaries. So you take documentaries, then Amy, you can take TV,
sure.
and Nina, you can take film. Pete, whatever you want. Okay. Okay.
If you want to produce in television, well, first of all, one thing I will say, especially for those of you who raised your hands want to be writer-directors in this room, not everyone should be a writer-director because of what Nina said, and you need to support writer-directors. So if it's hard for you to write or direct, maybe that's not your calling, because your calling should actually be easy. It should be easy to sit at that page. So if it's not easy, maybe consider producing. And by that I say, everyone is a storyteller. Producing is also hard, but are you a people person? Are you good at that negotiation? Do you know yourself well enough to know when to fall back and when to lean in? That's producing. So maybe that's what you should be doing, because you're also a storyteller, and we need those storytellers to support writers and directors. But on the note of how do you start? It's getting to know writers and directors. I think the best producers have either taken a writing class or written a script. They feel how hard it is. They know one note pulls a whole thread. They know what it means when a writer says, and starts to panic and starts fighting, and they know how to deal with that. So taking a writing class is important. Being on sets is important. I found that the creative producers in television, the people who are not writer producers like myself, but who are independent creative producers who want to work in TV, they generally are in the trenches with writer directors early in their process and are available for notes and to spitball ideas and say, okay, whatever you're doing next, I just want to be there. How can I be there? And once they're in those trenches, they start moving up with those writers and directors who trust them, support them, believe in them. And the other thing is to learn a little bit about finance, not necessarily knowing how to cut the budget and the numbers like a line producer, but also understanding that if the writer wrote a helicopter, you can't afford a helicopter. So how do you have that conversation to understand what a budget is?
Not even a small helicopter, just a tiny helicopter.
Can't afford it, can't afford it.
A drone.
Yeah.
But to your point, television is a writer's medium, you know, and the importance of it is, even if you don't see yourself as Aaron Sorkin, you need to understand that process and how it works. Khaula?
Yeah, I feel like in documentary producing is relationship building, because I mean, it is no longer the heyday of documentary. It was at one point, and I think it's really hard for people. I'm also a filmmaker, like being in the realm of like, you're trying to finish your first feature, you're trying to look for money. I think what Nina said earlier, like understanding the marketplace. Right now, the doc marketplace is like true crime, blood, celebrity doc, music doc, right? If you're doing anything outside of that, maybe you got to frame it that way to sell it. But in producing, I think working on a big project, if you can, coming in as an AP, like learning the creative side of everything and then building relationships through that, because ultimately I think the pathway for documentary, a lot of it, because the studio system is sort of like pulled back, all those people who have made a lot of films and have had success are like applying to grants again. So like that's your competition now. So like how do you frame your story? All of that stuff, I think you can learn that if you get in working on a project and like just learning through that. Yeah.
Nina?
So I've been fortunate in building my career in feature films, and my feature film career has launched me into television. So I'm one of the very few lucky ones to be a non-writing EP, and I worked in television. And so, but the same skills that I took from feature films is identifying talent, pulling talent. So when I am on a television show, building a show with a showrunner, I pull talent. The studio's like, can you get that talent? I go, yes, I can. But because of my credibility in features, talent will come, right? So that does correlate, and it's something that you can look forward to. But if you want to plot out a process to produce, I think you should find a project that you love, that you absolutely love so much that you need to get it made. And look at the IP. If it's just a screenplay, option the screenplay. If there's rights issues, make sure you get the rights and then build it out. But do everything, you have to love it, because producing is really, really tough. You're gonna get told by so many people that it's not gonna work, there's no market for it, especially it stars people of color, just all the tropes in the business. But the thing is, once you prove it over and over again that it's business, you're gonna have fans allies that's gonna work with you. So for you to plot it out is, first and foremost, find a story you love, or you find a writer-director that is so talented that you're like, I'm gonna bet on this person. I'll do everything. I did that with Cooler. I go, this guy's amazing. Let's bet on him. Everybody in town said, you're betting on a first-time feature Black director from Oakland, telling everybody a story that's gonna be so depressing. There's no market for it. And I was told that all the way to Erica Tremblay's film last year, Fancy Dance. There's no market for it. But you guys are gonna hear what's gonna happen with that film soon.
Okay. Woo! I want to come. I'm going to go to Pete, but I want to come back to the point about talent and identifying talent, and talk a little bit about Fruitville. But Pete, you're leaving a very cushy job at Netflix. Very cushy job, and you are stressful, but you know, cushy, and you are venturing out on your own. Can you speak about and what you can share, some of the concrete things that you're looking to do with this new entity that you're building out?
Yeah, it's challenging because obviously it gave me the latitude to do 26 seasons of shows. You know, I started the first 2 Latinx pipeline programs at Netflix, and I tried to like push as much money that I could towards our people and underrepresented communities. And that was my responsibility, being there the minute I got any sense of power or any like ability to shift money anywhere. And for better or worse, like that's what I did. And I think I'm so proud of being able to do that. And so I want to continue that work in some way, whatever venture I move into next. But I'm hoping that it could be much further upstream and owning the publishing space and being able to translate IP into film and television and being able to source material and non-European mythologies like into like genre programming, which I think is like huge opportunity that would still, because it's stuff that I was trying to do too that was like being told no, right? Because there's like not an audience for it, or the audience isn't coming up for it. And so
Wait, you mean you want to make stuff out that is not just Latinx programming? You want to do other things?
yeah, I know,
really,
crazy, right?
Yeah, it's insane.
It's just more of like uplifting voices and finding voices. Like what excites me that I like hope to do is to have a ground up development, and I couldn't always do that from the office, right? Much to the chagrin of some of the people that I worked with, like I was probably in too deep sometimes, but that's what excites me is like I love working with writers, I love working with directors, and I want to find that voice, you know, like I think Sunny Lee's a great example on Beef of like betting on something and look how that turned out, right? It's still identity forward, it's still commercial, it's still nuanced, and the blast radius from that like hit outside of the AAPI community, you know? So I think that is like a great blueprint of the types of things that I want to do.
Yeah, speaking about Beef, I think that's definitely one of those shows that I believe the ramifications of that will be felt for many years to come, about really opening the doors. One of those shows, for me at least, was Insecure. Like, I remember.
Ooh, yeah. Thank you.
I remember where I was when I first saw it, and the first thing I thought was, "Wait, are they letting him say that on HBO? Like, they're letting him do that?" You know, but it was so transformative, not just for me, but a lot of people that look like me. So we have someone here who was kind of there from the beginning. Can you talk a little bit about that, the show, but also what it did for you as a writer, director, producer, and it's affected so many people, but I want to hear specifically for you how it helped kind of hone who you are right now as a storyteller.
Oh yeah, immensely. Like, not only is it, the best thing I've ever been hired to do, but one of the magical elements of Insecure that is hard to replicate in this new streaming world where people aren't taking risks anymore is that I always say Insecure was a teaching hospital. Season 1 of the show, we were all doing our job for the very first time. Issa had never been the lead of an HBO show. Prentice had never been a showrunner. Melina had never directed TV. I'd never been an on-set writer-producer. We were all new. But as a result, we were like, we have each other's backs. And we would side with each other. Yes, we do want that. And then later be like, what were you talking about? But we're like not going to, it's like act up in front of mixed company. It's like we're going to do it. We always had each other's backs, and we were like devoted to the idea of like we cannot fail and we have each other's backs. And I learned so much. I still remember my very first production meeting where someone asked a question like, oh, are we doing this or this? And I was like, that's a really great question. And I'm sitting there and everyone's like turning and looking at me. I was like, oh, that's for me to answer? And I was like, oh. And I'm like, but by the end, by season 5, the crew is like, oh, Amy's on set, we're good today. It's like, it's night and day because I got to fail in a safe space. I got to fail. And that is what I want to give other writers and directors of color, other artists of color, is the space to fail. Like, that's the only reason why you learn. That's the only way you learn is by messing up along the way. So yeah, it obviously started a lot of people's careers, yep. But we've seen in the transition, we always called our show like the last show of the Obama era. And now it's like a pre-pandemic show. Like Trump came, pandemic came, COVID came, and then, that's the same thing. And then the strike, all these things. And now like Insecure would not be greenlit today. And that is the horror of how this industry has changed. I love the Kugler effect. I do not love the Netflix effect. You know, I'm like how now it's just like everything is like bust it out, make it cheap, get it out there, no promotion. Like you have to just tweet about it to get people to listen. Like that has been a really difficult journey for creators of color. And I don't know what the future looks like yet, but I do know we can't leave just because we're being told no. We have to keep fighting. Going back to your word.
And what you just said really resonates with myself and our team. We spent a lot of time thinking about how can we use our platform to kind of replace some of that marketing that's been lost. How can we work with our programming team to help showcase content from newer voices? It's not just what's on Disney. It's not just Marvel. They're newer voices that need to be heard. So just want to put that out there. You guys have an ally in us, and it's something that we'll continue pushing on. I want to talk about Fruitvale. I'm going to paraphrase here. I think I've heard Charles King say this. He said he told Ryan Coogler that you are going to be one of the most consequential voices of our time. And that was even before Creed, before any of that stuff. So when you talk about identifying talent, did you feel that way too? Like, when did you know? When did you know, like, oh, this guy he's going to be the one?
I'm going to tell you, I'm pre-Charles King.
Okay.
Okay? And he knows that. We're friends. We're friends, okay? I met Ryan when he was still in school. A professor at USC called me and said, I heard you teamed up with Forrest Whitaker. You got to meet this kid in my class. So he walked into my office, and I sat with him and just realized the soul that he has when it comes to storytelling. He was so deep at such a young age. And then he left me 5 short films. And I watched all 5 of them. I'm crying. I don't know why I'm crying. I'm like, this is amazing. But they're the most simple short films. But they were brilliant. I left 5 of them on Forrest Whitaker's desk. I go, you got to see this kid. He watches the shorts the next day. Calls, tell him to come back in. I'm like, he's still in school. He comes back in, and then Forrest goes, what do you want to make? What's your first feature? And he said, I want to talk about Oscar Grant at Fruitvale Station. Forrest turns to me and goes, let's do it. And we went on a journey of acquiring the life rights from the family. It took me 11 months to get it because they were in the news. It was very traumatic for them. They didn't trust anybody from Hollywood because Hollywood already went knocking on their doors. And it took time and trust with the family to give us the rights. And once we landed the rights, we said, Ryan, go and write. He wrote the first draft within 2 weeks because he was so ready. And it was 150 pages. So it was so brilliant, but you're crying and you're like, you need to cut down 40 pages. And that's what happened. And during that time, Sundance Labs called. They were tracking him. So they called him into the labs. He came to the labs here, workshopped his screenplay. They wanted him to go to the director's lab in June, July of that year, of 2012. And I go, no, we're going to film this. And he's like, but I need the director's lab. I'm like, no, the film's gonna be your lab. Let's go. So that's how it happened. Then the agents came around. What are you guys doing? What are you doing? You guys, that's what happened.
But you also hit on something I think sometimes might be, and depending on what industry you are, might be like imposter syndrome. You don't think you're ready. And it takes people like you who can say like, no, let's do it. Because there's never a right time to jump into something.
But you have to tell the filmmakers, like, we got you. I got you. I've done that with every filmmaker that I've worked with. Filmmakers will be, I have a recent Asian American film. My filmmaker would be in the corner sobbing because of stress. And I'm sitting in the corner going, I got you. I got you. We're gonna get through this. And it's like you're constantly there to hold them, to have that trust. And they feel it when you have, I go, ask any filmmaker I've worked with in the last decade how I got them. So they don't doubt it. And that's what we have to do as producers. And we have to also help them level up all the time. Level up, level up. Keep your eye on the goal. And constantly be there to watch the monitor, to tell them like something off, and be okay with that. But that trust is earned, right? So that's what I love.
So if y'all are keeping track, we've got fighter, influencer, and counselor. you gotta be there for. No, that was amazing. I think I want to switch gears a little bit. Where were you? Do you remember, if it was a certain age, where were you when you realized this is how I want to spend my life? Was it younger, your younger years? Was it more recently? Like what was that moment that you said, okay, I'm gonna be a storyteller? Or did something happen to, precipitate that?
Yeah, there were two moments for me. One was high school. I went to a PWI, predominantly white institution, in high school, and a friend of mine was in theater and asked me to be in a play she was doing. I'm nobody's actor, but I was like, I'll be in your play. I had no clue what it meant. But going through the rehearsals and seeing everyone else involved, I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to do something like this. And the guy who was like my co-lead in the play, at the end, they asked us to give a speech about what we wanted. And he was like, I want to be an actor. And I was like, I want to do something in entertainment. And everyone's like, yeah. Like, kind of like, sure, girl. And I didn't know what it was. And then I started writing in college. And I actually had the moment on film. I studied abroad and I took a camera with me, my parents' camcorder, and I was filming everything. And one day I left the camera on while I was talking to my friends. And one of my French friends was describing the difference between surprise and suspense to me. And it's not even on me. The camera's not on me. It's like on the table. And I can just hear my little like 20-year-old voice going like, what's the difference? And he's like, well, surprise is the gun under the table. Suspense is it's on the table, And I was just like, and I hear my voice go, oh my gosh, I want to make films for the rest of my life. And I saw it again when I was older and I was like, wow, that bitch didn't know how hard this was gonna be. But those were the moments. It was exposure of being like around people making the thing that like I got high off of it. And then the second time was learning how to tell a story and realizing like, oh, it's intentional the way these stories are being crafted and I wanna be a part of crafting that. Those were the two moments. Producing came from television, like from seeing the process being born. And I was like, oh, I wanna help other people make their shit.
I mean, I feel like for me, it happened like post college. I had gotten laid off from my first job, and I had been doing some like off Broadway theater. And I heard from a friend, he was like, "Oh, I know this Pakistani director. She's shooting her next TV show in New York. She's looking for an assistant." I'm like, "Okay, I don't have a job. Let me go interview, meet her for coffee, get the job, find out it's to be the assistant director," which I had no fucking idea what that was. I was like, I don't even know why I'm hired, but it's a Pakistani show, so it's like all guerrilla shooting with no permits, all this stuff. So I feel like it was like baptism by fire. I like learned on the job. 3 days in, I was like, I don't think I can do this. Maybe I should quit. I talked to the producer and she's like, "No, honey, you're doing too much. You need to like learn how to delegate." And I was like, oh. So like something clicked. And then the next, month of filming was amazing. And I remember for me when the show came out and it ended up being like a big hit on Pakistani TV, the feeling I got being like, oh, I was a part of this. Like I helped make this happen. And that feeling was like, okay, I think I want to do this. And then the second feeling for me was when I was in grad school for film and I was in a directing class. And I think that's when it clicked for me, like, oh, I think I have something to say. And I think my whole life I felt like I couldn't say what I wanted to say, and this is a space where I can explore that I was like, oh, I want to lean into that, and that's been the journey, yeah.
It was elementary school, and we had a publishing lab that you could only go to like every 2 months or something, and I would sneak in to make little horror like books, and I got in trouble because I was using like the nice binding and all this stuff.
Where did you go to elementary school? They didn't have that where I went.
It was a science magnet in the Bay.
Nice.
But I was bused in like an hour, so I was like, it was not my hood. And I was like so obsessed with like scary movies, but I hadn't seen any yet. And the first I saw was Nightmare on Elm Street, and I was like, this is it. I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I want to do whatever this thing is. And it wasn't until I was going up for a job at Marvel, and it was specifically for a horror slate focused on 3 diverse characters. And I was like, this is what everything has been laddering up to at this moment. And it wasn't because like I was a brown guy. It was because like I was bringing in people that they had never met before, and it was the first time where I could say like command a room and say, "You're gonna listen to me because this is what this community wants," or like these are the writers that we're gonna hire, and it was a long gap. Like it's been 20 years in the business, and that moment, which was 7 years ago, was quite recent in sort of like the timeline of everything. But for me, it was like publishing those little horror stories to watching Nightmare on Elm Street and then developing Marvel's horror slate to today is really the journey of like storytelling for me.
Nina, when did you know?
I thought I knew when I saw The Matrix. I was like, oh my God, how cool. Eastern philosophy with Western philosophy meeting together, creating an incredible film. And that was the first moment where I was so inspired, but I didn't know there was such a thing as producing, because culturally, we're not told that you should be a producer, right? So I didn't know that. And then I started working in action films, martial arts action films. That's how I got into the world of production, because I couldn't get into Hollywood. Learned that, came back. But the real moment where I knew I was a producer, or I know I wanted to do this full time, was after the first cut of Fruitvale Station, where it was me, Forrest, and Kugler watching the first cut, and we were just crying our eyes out. And then Forrest turned to me and say, "This is what we need to do. We need to move the needle in every story that we tell." And that was the moment I was like, I'm a real producer. And that was 10 years ago. Yeah, so that was the moment where I'm like, I'm going hard.
Y'all, Nina's trying to make me cry. I'm not gonna do it. No. This has been an amazing conversation. I have personally learned so much, and you're all storytellers who have inspired me, honestly, with a lot of the content that you've made. Okay, I think that's the wrap up. Before we do, just some of the things that we've heard today is. One, you can't all be writers and directors. We need some producers, but also it's a multidisciplinary role. You have to wear so many hats. It's hard, but it's needed. And the one thing I want to kind of end on is, and you guys can take it. Whoever wants to take it first. When it's all said and done, how do each of you want to be remembered? I had to save my good one for last.
I mean, I always say that I want my legacy to be that I built bridges for other storytellers. That's what I'm put here to do, is to build bridges for other storytellers. I really spent a lot of time focusing on mindset, like staying in the mindset to survive Hollywood. I actually have a course about it on my website if anybody wants that, because I find that Hollywood, it goes to Niecy Nash's Emmy speech where she's like, this career tried to break me, and I want to thank me for sticking it out. Like, in all honesty, I'm like, I was put here to build bridges, so I can't stop what I'm doing. Bridges are built, because there's a philosophy that says like you die twice. You die when your body dies and when the last person says your name. And I'm like, I never want to die. I'm in this to be immortal. So that only comes through building the bridge.
Amy, tell people the name of your podcast. Tell people the name of your podcast.
The Antidote. My podcast is called The Antidote. It's how to survive the bullshit.
That's a tough act to follow.
I'm sorry.
Let me
soften it. I'll go, and then I'll make you feel better.
Go.
I used to be so concerned about like credits because you were playing the game, right? And it's a race, and you're like, I got to be the best, and I got to do this, and I got to do all of these things. But it wasn't until I started doing the pipeline programs where I was like, oh, this is the thing that actually matters most, is that when I'm here and the fellows are coming up and saying thank you, like I got into another fellowship because of that, or I got my first feature sold over here. That more than anything, like my name doesn't have to be on anything. I just want people to know that I was a good person and that I helped them somewhere along the way, because churn in this business for people of color is so high. And even if it's calling up somebody and being like, you got the next 6 months, like you can do it. And if there's any way in this next 6 months that I can help you, that's how I want to be remembered, as like the guy you can call up.
You've redeemed yourself, Pete.
I think for me, like I think about being a Muslim woman, being a woman of color in this industry, and like I feel like I want to be, I don't even know if I want to be remembered as much as I want to be able to be a contributor to like an archive of work about our community that like can exist in the future, right? It's like, I just want to be a part of that as opposed to like someone knows my name in 500 years. But like, it would be great if someone, yeah, in 300 years is like, oh, this short film by this person is being discovered. You know, it's like when you rediscover someone, because I do think in our lifetime, for the kind of artist I am or producer that I am, like it's really, it's maybe not impossible to see that happen, but with the way the industry is going, it's like, you know, I'm thinking about the future. How can I help the people behind me and like support the people ahead of me and just contribute to like a canon of work?
Take us home, Nina.
Right. I recently sat with a dear friend of mine, and I'm like, Dad, this business is hard. The stories I choose are the toughest stories. And then she's turned to me, she goes, but one day when you look back at your career, of every story you fought for, how does that feel? And I remember that really moved me. And so what I would love to leave a legacy of is championing stories and storytellers that were told impossible, but I made them possible, and that the filmmakers continue to go on to these huge careers that change the paradigm of Hollywood. So that's what I love doing, and to see filmmakers I worked on that went to Marvel, that won Oscars, and just seeing them continue to change. Even like Boots Riley with Sorry to Bother You, he created the most brilliant television show, I'm a Virgo. Right? So that's the type, and he was a filmmaker that everybody thought, you're crazy. You're crazy to bet on him. We were profitable. We moved the needle. I remember when we premiered here at Sundance, filmmakers were walking out of the theater crying. And I'm like, it's not a sad movie. Why are you crying? And they're like, because you told us that you can think out of the box and you can get these crazy stories told, and there's a marketplace for it. So that's what I want to do.
You are all amazing. Thank you. I want to thank every single one of you for coming. Have a good Sundance. Thank you.